Are we in?
You're absolutely in, sir. How are you?
Why am I still amazed when this stuff actually works?
I'm constantly amazed.
So this is our new life now, isn't it? On this new app, which I'd never even heard of before this started. This is my new world.
2 weeks ago, I never heard of Zoom. Now I've become it's become deeply ingrained in my daily process. But this is right. And I think that first of all, thank you for joining me. It's such a pleasure.
It's a pleasure. I always feel like when I see you when we're out, I never actually get a chance to talk to you because there's 50 other people around. So this is great for me. It's a pleasure.
It's great for me too, and I've been following your activity on social media, based on also the times when we've had an opportunity to talk. I think the takeaway I've always gotten is you're just such a kind person and you're such a nice person. And
another one fooled.
Trust me, I work on the same trick myself, actually.
Oh, good. You've mastered it too.
You're very kind, sir. So what I wanted to talk to you a little bit about is about this new normal, and I think kind of the ways in which we're all kind of processing what we're undergoing. I think for me, initially, it was a very unstructured sort of reaction. Like I didn't know what to do. I came back to Singapore from the UK, went straight into a 14-day quarantine, and then came out a day after that, and then a day afterwards, they locked the country down, which I had no issue with. I think it's exactly the right thing to do. But I think that initially I was almost using the time in this very unstructured way. I was kind of being overwhelmed by the information that I was watching in the news. And what happens is you start to despair and you start to become really sensitive to everything that's happening around you. And it only realized, I kind of always go back to this one piece of information that a guy who I consider to be my mentor, Ralph Lauren, said to me, which was, a lot of times when people are unhappy, it's because they spend too much time thinking about themselves and not enough time thinking about other people. And I was like, he's absolutely right. So, we every day in some way, I try to do something positive, hopefully for someone else, whether it's a friend or, now we're working on raising money for a charity for the World Health Organization. That's something I'll talk to you a little bit about later. But it's true. And you feel better. And then it gives you positivity and you're able to execute something that you're like, I want to do this for someone else. And when you're able to achieve that, it puts kind of a smile on your face and it gives you a sense of self-worth, and that is maybe one of the most important things to have is to sort of, because if you're able to execute something that you feel is innately hopeful, it gives you this incredible sort of like opportunity to believe in that the outcome of all of this will be a hopeful one. And one of the things that I came across that really moved me, and not just me, but clearly a lot of people, was the sing-alongs that you're doing. I find them to be incredibly uplifting, totally inspiring. They just put a smile on my face. I have a buddy named George Bamford, who I'm not sure. Oh yeah, he was at that dinner.
Yeah, I've met him. Yeah,
and he had a terrible day on Sunday. I won't go into the details why, but he's a strong person and he just felt very challenged. And then so I sent him the link to that song that you composed and that you were singing over Easter, and he said that just fixed my day.
That's great. That's great. That's the idea. Yeah, totally. I think at times uncertain times like this, I think we react exactly as you just said, is that we turn to what can we do? What can we do? What it's a question I ask myself a lot is, what do I actually do? What difference am I making in all of this? And it sounds often quite ridiculous that you sing songs and you go on stage. And I mean, I have so many moments, especially as I've got older and I've become a father, where I feel ridiculous many times a day, thinking, what am I? What kind of a job is this? But obviously there is a point, there is a seriousness to it when one person is affected by what you do, and I almost have to rewind to when I first started playing piano when I was 10. I got this keyboard for Christmas, and by 5 o'clock on Christmas Day, you know, we'd stumbled over this fact that I'd been given a very raw talent for music. And within like 6 or 7 hours of being on this instrument, I could play like every Christmas carol that had ever existed. Now that's one thing, but then of course there's the reason of what music is that it's also it's a valuable tool. And you look around the room on Christmas Day, and everyone's smiling, everyone's happy. It's made everyone, you know, become someone else for those few minutes. And of course, that's then the serious side of what music is, the effect it has on people, which I try and, you know, I try not to think about it too much, because obviously if you do, I think, you know, what you naturally do as a performer or a songwriter or anything else, it starts becoming prescriptive, which it shouldn't be. It should be totally from the heart always. But you know, you asked what it was, and so I've told you, you know, at times like this, you reach for what you can do and how you can help. And you know, as we actually came to our countryside home about 2 weeks before lockdown, just to make that point. I don't want to get in trouble. About 2 weeks before lockdown even was talked about, and we just stayed here, and it was like a reaction to me. It was like, right, what, I need to do something. I can't sit here and do nothing. And so that's when we came up with this. It started off with like 3 mates, you know, fancy doing something on the internet, on, you know, for something for socials, and it's grown into this. I mean, I even know what's coming. I've got so many now just waiting to be released of these things, with the craziest cast of people. As it unfolds over the next few weeks, I know you'll message me. People want to join in. They want to be a part of it. And you know, even for us as musicians, you know, the 3, I've got 2 to film this morning, and that 3 minutes of filming them and chatting and getting it wrong a couple of times, it's brilliant, because it takes my mind off what's happening, and it's just beautiful. I love it.
I think the funny thing is that we're starting to find ourselves even busier in isolation than we were in real life, you know?
Yeah. Well. Just to quickly go back to my frantic text before we started this. Of course, people have now got busy again, because they've gone over the like, oh, what can I do to now? I know what I'm going to do. So of course, every day I get so many emails for film this, do this, speak to this person. And at the moment, I'm just quite happy doing the sessions every day and speaking to people I want to speak to, like you. So try and keep it on the low down.
Of course.
I don't want the floodgates opening.
Yes.
Because everyone needs content right now, right? Everyone is now seeing the opportunity of this and going, right, shit, I need stuff to put up there. So I get it. I understand it. And I think, you know, for people like me who are the content, we just need to pick carefully of what we want to do and what we can make a difference doing.
Well, you absolutely make a huge difference. And, you know, one of the things that I love about it is the idea of a sing-along or a duet, because it's wonderful. It's a wonderful moment throughout our day where we are in isolation, or maybe sort of, you know, with our pets or our, you know, our families or whatever. But it's a moment of connecting with someone that's somewhere else in the world. And that connection that you create through music is such a salient bridge, right? There's a real kind of powerful moment that's happening between the two of you in terms of sharing. And there's so much beauty in that. And I think that that's what kind of immediately affects us. You know, it's like, wow, look at what 2 human beings, or, you know, sometimes you do them with a couple of people, or 3 or 4 human beings together, can do to make you feel uplifted. And so did you initially think of it as being like, I want to do it with someone else. I want to connect with other people.
Yeah, it had to be that for me. It was about reaching out and because, you know, I'm going through the whole thing. You know, my mum's on her own. You know, so we're reaching out all the time. You know, the other great thing that this has done for me, you know, I'm reaching out to people I haven't reached out to for so long. So the message, the underlining unspoken message in all of this was to reach out to someone else. And of course, the thing is with music is this is what always fascinates me. You can meet somebody, you can walk in a studio and you can meet someone for the first time. They might not even speak English. They might speak another language. When the music starts, it doesn't matter where you're from, what language you speak in, what your background, it doesn't matter, because music is a universal language which people like me speak. And when we, when we do it together, when we do it as a group, whether it's a band or two people, that's beautiful. That's a gift, which, like I say, I've been gigging since I was 11. So it's something that I've felt, the good nights, the times you get on the court and you can't hit that ball as good as you did the day before. You have those nights, but then there's the nights where the stars align, where we all play a brilliant gig, the audience react to it. That's what we're searching when we're doing these little 3-minute things each day, is that it's just great fun. It's a connection which is very unique, and it's a connection which people love to watch.
That's awesome, man. And I love the fact that you're being super inclusive about it. I love the fact that you also talked about music being this international language that transcends sort of like, language or race or religion or geography, And
Yeah.
I think that it's so important now more than ever that, I remember I was watching, because it was recently the anniversary of Apollo 13, just when they, the spacecraft got kind of crippled in space and they had to kind of bring it back home. But there was a moment where they showed the view of the Earth from space, right? And it's one planet and we're all on it together, right?
Yeah.
And there is nothing that's not a issue. What we're experiencing is not pertinent to just one country or one religion or one race. We're all in this together, and we're only going to get through it if we get through it together, and by being as positive as possible and trying to spread compassion as much as we possibly can,
Yeah.
So I love the fact that also your partners in your duets, it seems like almost a seemingly random series of people that can be like rock gods, like Brian May, and can be someone that is relatively unknown, I guess, as an emerging talent. Like, how does this come about? Like, who do you pick?
Honestly, this is the thing now. It's become relatively successful online. So I get like labels calling me now. We got this new act, and it's like, you know what? It's strictly mates. It's strictly friends. The only time I open it up is on a Saturday, where fans can send videos and they can have a little more. And I try and pick ones which, they're talented, and we don't go silly with those things. It's because they're good. And I pick them. I've had a little young guy playing the drums on there. I mean, they're the fun ones on the weekend. But in the week, when we do this at 5 p.m. UK time, they're mates. They're all mates. They're people I chat with, I talk music with. I try and keep that narrow. I watch now the lockdown time frame with the sole interest of how many more of these friends I've got. Not how many weeks we're in isolation. It's like, how can I stretch this another 3 weeks now, Prime Minister? I mean, they're not thinking of me when they're considering these options. It's so self-centered to the country.
That's great. Well, I'm sure, as you were mentioning before, that you've got a long list of people who want to collaborate with you, because it's beautiful. And I love the collaborations also because it's a clear expression about how much people love you as well. I mean, you can tell how into it that they are. So I wanted to ask you something, and I wrote about this on Instagram. When I was growing up, I'm slightly older than you are, Gary. I think I'm a couple of years older than you are. But you were either like a Rolling Stones or a Beatles guy, right? And for me, it was always the Rolling Stones, because they had that kind of swagger and mystique and kind of bad boy thing, And I always considered the Beatles to be a little bit trite and a little bit cliched in terms of its focus on positivity and happiness. And then funnily, like about, when this all started, I started to love the Beatles, and now I listen to the Beatles like all the time, like every day. And it's interesting how much a song or a piece of music can affect and uplift you in this period of isolation. This is the incredible power of music. So what I'd like to know is what are you listening to, and in what way does it affect you?
Yeah, it's a great. This is a, you know, and for people who do what I do, I think the one complaint that all my friends who work in music have is that usually we spend the day listening to music. So at the end of the day, the last thing you want to do is listen to music. And so, you know, it's the common complaint of all of us that we don't really ever get the space and the time to listen to music. This has been a great time for that for me. And I'm going to recommend you something, because it's something where I started listening to 3 or 4 weeks ago, and of course I almost, it's like a religious experience for me now. And I believe it was a week long string of concerts by Noel Coward. So it was somewhere in the 50s. This was. You'll find it on YouTube. It does. It is possible to find it on vinyl, I believe. There's a fabulous cover of this album, which is it's called. I think it's called Noel Coward at Las Vegas. I think he's at the Flamingo, and he is photographed in the middle of the desert, looking the English gent that he was, with a cup of tea in the middle of the desert. And I just thought, what a brilliant juxtaposition that is. There's a guy in a 3-piece suit in the middle of the Nevada desert with a cup of tea. And it was the cover of this album. It's Noel Coward at Las Vegas. The songs, it's a live performance. It's about an hour long. It's not very long. Just put it on. It's hilarious. But I mean, it is funny. It's entertaining. But I mean, how clever was that guy? I mean, the lyrics, the content. It's funny. It's beautiful. You can hear the audience laughing. You can hear the band playing. He's an amazing pianist, Noel Coward. Just put it on. It's really good.
Incredible. And, you know, I think that one of the things is, you know, throughout this period, and probably with some lasting effect afterwards, will be our interaction with these kind of devices, the screen, for example, that I'm speaking to you through. You know, at some point, you know, I've done like cocktail sessions with friends. I've done cigar smoking. I'm actually exercising or racing on the bicycle with my friends, you know, virtual racing. And, you know, obviously social media is that sort of instant connective device that allows everyone to see what everyone else is doing at a certain moment, or what we allow them to see. But it's been used in this instance and in what you do. And I think perhaps you know my friend Paul Feig as well, who's a film director. He does his cocktail session in a way that's so powerful and so has really rallied the community around them. What to you is the power of social media, and what to you are the best positive examples of it?
Well, when social media started happening, I was relatively late to it, because I couldn't see a purpose in my world. And then I was introduced to Twitter, and for the first time I could see its use. And it was a really lovely moment, because the one thing I could complain about my my first round of doing what I do in the 90s was that I never felt I could get close to the audience. I always felt like there was either a TV camera or a journalist, or it's very hard to get to the audience. The only way you could really get them is to go outside at the stage door, or you know, some would wait at the airport. That was your only connection with your audience. So very limited, and a fan club, and you know, and they'd often be misleading sometimes, because it'd often, you know, be hate mail and death threats and things like that in there. So it felt hard to get they were always there, those trolls. They're just they're more accessible now.
Because their girlfriends were in love with you. That's why they were so upset.
So going back to Twitter, when I saw that, I thought, hang on, this is good, because all of a sudden I can have access to how they feel about things, how they reacted to certain music, how they reacted to us playing certain venues. All of a sudden, this is information I never had before. So when that started, then I saw the value in it. So for me as an artist, and that's the other question, I guess, would I be on social media if I didn't do what I did? In what way would I be using it then to connect with friends, etc.? But for me, as an artist and a performer, that it's a tool to see what's going on, the consciousness of your audience. That's why I think it's so valuable and useful and enjoyable, really, to me, is that I can come off stage at night and I can thank the audience for being there. We can make sure that the people who weren't there were there virtually with pictures. I always encourage the fans to upload as many pictures as you can for the people who aren't lucky enough to be there, all live in different countries. So for that, it makes the world smaller, makes your world more accessible, and makes the audience and your relationship to them closer.
That's amazing. You know, it was interesting, I think, and I was like yourself, was late to social media as well. And when I first started it, I was quite nervous and tried to portray myself as being cool, right? Which didn't work at all. And it only started to really kind of work for me, both from the perspective of people finding it interesting and for me to find it interesting, when I was just let it all go and just was myself, you know?
Yeah.
When I showed like the sort of meltdowns that I had in airports, or when I was engaged in my, you know, clearly misguided philosophical ramblings, or when I try to see something, when I see something that from a social or cultural or ethical perspective that I think is unjust, you know, and I won't go into those things because I don't want to change this to a political debate, but, you know, I see a lot of that happening now, and I kind of have to call it out because I feel it's not right, you know? But it's actually a wonderful way to interact with people. Maybe sometimes even more practical than actual, you know, person-to-person contact. Because as we were saying also, like even for us, you know, we've managed to spend time together, and it's been great for me. But this is really the first time we've managed to really, you know, actually talk and exchange ideas, which I think is really cool, you know. Okay, what I want to ask you next is in what way do you think the world will be different after we get out of this, which we absolutely will? And one of the people that I interviewed, Jean-Claude Biver, who's kind of a legend in the watch industry, said something very interesting to me. He said that even though we're in the third millennium, the world is still being run by old men who grew up in the 20th century, right? And he himself, he's I think in his late 60s. But he said, and the problem was that we're still ascribing to a 20th century mentality, especially in business. And that mentality was, we must maximize profits no matter what the cost to the planet and no matter what the cost to human beings, right? And he said that, and he says that clearly, what that pathway has led us to, you know, to the situation that we're in now. And this is in some ways, I mean, this is not to take away the incredible tragedy of what's going on from the impact on people perishing, but it's also a wake-up call for us to decide how we're going to want to live our lives after this. And I think, and he hopes that the next generation, the millennials and Generation Z, will want to live their lives in a way where ethics and the person that you are in terms of what you give to your community is just as important as wealth. And when people profit, they profit in the correct way, which means they're profiting so they are not exploiting either the planet or other human beings, but trying to make the world better. And as cliched as that sounded before this whole happened, now it's an absolute necessity. So for you, what do you think is going to happen to humanity and how we interact with the world after this?
Oh, wow. I think that's what we're all, yeah. There's a couple of things for me, is that, you know, I look around at so many of my friends that are obviously business people. I'm so worried for them all. I really am. I just, no matter which way I look at it, I don't think there's much good news in the near future. I've seen people put their lives into trying to get their businesses off the ground, and I think that those are going to be the worst. I mean, it's going to be, I think it's not, I can't see it being nice the next few years for people in that position. And so, you know, at the moment, I'm trying to make a list of all, you know, the favorite people I buy things from, and I'm really trying to support that. I'm trying to use my social media to make sure if if I'm wearing an article of their clothing or one of their belts or one of their phones or one of their cables, or I'm just making sure that their name's up there. I'm just any way you can to try and support people you've bought things from, or restaurants you go to, or bars that you love. And I mean, it's like, you know, I'm not a politician or whatever, so I've just got to do my bit in my corner of the world for those people. The question of how we're all going to be after all this is, I'm asked a lot about the next generation, not only musically but being a parent as well. And it's going to sound a little bit of a cop-out when I say this, but I'm not that worried about the next generation. I see our kids, and of course we're parents where we try and give them advice, and we try and make sure they stay on the right road, and you know, all the things that parents worry about their children. But when I really stand back, and we've got a 19 and an 18-year-old who are going to be the, you know, at the moment, the next generation. And I look at what they say and how they treat their friends and how they view the world. I'm not worried. I'm not worried. They're good kids. I like their friends. And, you know, I look at my nephews and my niece. They're really smart kids. They know what's important. In some ways, I'm learning from them. So when I look that far down the line, I'm not worried at all. And the other thing is, coming back to this, and people like us and the people we work with, we're adaptable. We're not going to fall down after this. I don't believe that. We're the spirit of the people I know and my audience. You know, if I you know, go on there and see what people are doing right now and look around. And of course, yes, there's some horrible things happening right now, but look through that and you'll see creativity. You'll see people doing amazing things for the village they live in. If you start looking through this a little bit more, that's the light. That's the light right there. So yes, there is times ahead. There's seriousness ahead. There's change ahead. But I don't know. I think we're going to be all right.
Yeah, I agree with you. You know, I was so impressed. I remember when the NHS said they wanted, or they needed 250,000 volunteers, and 600,000 people volunteered. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, it was quite extraordinary. And when you look at like these, you know, these guys on the front line, the doctors and the first responders and the nurses, and even the people who are working in grocery shops. I mean, let's not forget that that's not an easy job. You know, you're there with people who are paranoid, who are scared, who are aggressive sometimes, and you got to check each and every one of them out. It's not easy. I totally agree with you. I think that the best way to kind of approach this is to look from a local perspective and what you can do. And you're right. Also, there's so many businesses that are so massively impacted by this. And for a lot of people, that's their dream, that they poured their sort of heart, soul, and all of their money into creating maybe that restaurant or maybe that bar or whatever, you know, and now they're struggling because they still have the overhead of whether it may be rent or some amount of staff or huge amounts of supplies that they purchase, and they can't amortize on any of that. And I would hate that people would stop dreaming and stop feeling that they can achieve those goals because of what we've experienced. And I love what you said. I have a very good friend who is an amazing guy, and he lost his mother-in-law to coronavirus, I think, just recently. And it's been sure. I mean, of course, it's tough for him, but he's somehow more determined than ever to succeed because it makes you grateful for the life that you have. And it makes you very empathetic to others. You know, would you agree?
Oh, definitely would. I think that when you start, the funny thing for me is that I started watching the news. That's not a good thing to do. I mean, I always used to pride myself on saying I haven't read a newspaper since 1984 because, you know, without getting too deep, I just don't want to be told what to think. I just don't want someone else sculpting my view on what I just think. I'm just going to look from my view, and I've pretty much held it that. Of course, there's been times, but for some, for the reason that we all know, I've been watching a lot more news, and you've got to pull back from that because it's too overwhelming. It's too much. It's too much, and all of a sudden you're feeling anxious. You're feeling things you've never felt before. I mean, if I think about it for long enough, I can bring on the virus. I mean, that's I can bring on the symptoms. It's like, your head can start. So I think you've got to really dial out and like you say, focus on what can you do. How the other thing when you talk about empathy and things like that is that one thing which I've never been very good at, and I've really started to try and implement during this, is listening. Listening is a really undervalued skill because we all love to talk. We all love to talk about ourselves, and I spend my life talking about when I come in from a day of promotion. My wife says, "How's your day been?" Talking about yourself all day. I mean, it's like, I spend my life focused on me, and it's like, just listen, and it's nice. When you really listen to a friend and listen to you sometimes learn things. You learn things about them, and it's a lovely thing to have that. And I know the friends of mine who are really good listeners, and I love them because of that. And so yeah, that's the one thing I've tried to open out a little more.
But that's super important. I guess especially and a lot of people are in a house, or even if you're like, in New York City, for example, you're lucky to be in a studio apartment, and they're with maybe their partner, maybe their children, and it becomes like respecting other people and their thoughts, having empathy for the way they're thinking, trying to place yourself in their in their shoes becomes super important, right? Because we're all a little bit on edge. Just from a practical perspective, and I don't want to keep you too much longer. Maybe I'll ask you just one or two questions. How do you structure your day? For me, it was super important that I got up as early as I possibly could, maybe even earlier than I normally did. Did my exercise, wrote something, because then I feel my mind was used, and then and then have my meetings with everyone that I work with, and for the rake, our friend Tom Chamberlain, I'm not sure if our editor, he came up with a very smart idea, which is like, look, we're the rake, so the jackets have to be required. So, which is why I'm wearing this jacket, because I'm having that meeting next. And it's true, the guys start to feel better about themselves,
Right.
and they have a little pride, and they came up, they showed up clean shaven. And then we began to structure a day in which we were looking forward to this moment where we could share our ideas, where we could challenge each other intellectually and creatively, and we would listen to each other, as you said. How do you structure your day?
Yeah, I agree. It's very important. I've had a kind of dry run at this self-isolation before. I'll very quickly go over this because it's a long story, but basically I had a little fall at the end of the 90s where kind of went out of favor a bit, lost my record deal, was kind of presented with, right, I'm 25, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? And I had a good 2 years where I barely left the house.
Wow.
And I think I spent the first year sort of blaming everybody and smoking weed for most of the day, drinking heavily in the evening, lying in till midday, a sort of depression, really. And then, of course, you spend the second year starting to think, I need to get out of this, but I don't know how to. And then by the end of the second year, I started to realize that as humans, we need structure, or I do. I need to structure. I need to feel like at the end of each day I've achieved something. So I agree. I started writing out a plan for the day, and I've almost gone back to it. Funnily enough, in these last few weeks, I get up very early, so at 5:45, 6 o'clock, I go and walk the dogs for an hour. That's my exercise for the day. I get back and straight in the gym. Then I get the gym out of the way. If I don't do it early, I won't do it later. So I do all that, and by the time I've done all that and I've checked my phone and things, the house is starting to wake up then. so I can start doing breakfast, so I can start making tea for my wife. And then I come in here, and this is at the point where I start my day. And now I'll work till 5, 6 o'clock tonight. I've been fortunate enough that I'm in a period where a lot of my friends have had to cancel tours and things. People are sat at home where they should be working now. But for me, I'm in the middle of writing a couple of films at the moment, so it's a good time for this to have happened to me, thankfully. So my day's sort of 9 o'clock till 6, 7 at night. And then I go in and make dinner in the evening. And by 9, 10 o'clock, I'm out, I'm done. And that's the structure. And it works very, very well.
That's fantastic. I can attest to the fact that you wake up very early, because I think it was yesterday I sent you a message, and you replied to me at 5:45 in the morning.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, he's an early riser. But
yeah, I'm always up early. Yeah.
I get that. So I don't run every day because I'm old and fat and my knees can't take it. But I try, when I do run, I try to do it when
you spin, right?
I spin, yeah. So I've got a spin bike here, and so I do that every day. And every third day, well, I was trying to do it every other day, but it takes me a while to recover sometimes. I try to do a run, and then of course the first day I went out for super long run, and I just couldn't move the next day. But I love the idea of getting that done before the sun's risen. And to you feel the sense of accomplishment that you've gotten something done. And I want to just touch on one thing that you'd mentioned, which was, I know that people perceive me as being Mr. Negroni, right? And I love a Negroni. I love the celebratory dimension of it. I love it as a drink. But I do want to also tell everyone to just be a little bit wary about how you're using alcohol during this period as well, right? Because, of course, when people first kind of were in the shock of this, yeah, I get it that people were having like breakfast Negronis or whatever, and that's that's fun. And maybe if you want to do that, on Easter morning as a celebration, so be it, right? But you're not going to feel good if you're just getting wasted all day long, right? If you're going to have that Negroni, my recommendation, and this is just my recommendation, is make it something that you earn, right? Make it something that physically you put in the effort, mentally you put in the effort, and then when 5, 6, or 7 o'clock rolls around, like I don't drink until after 8. And then when you have that, 1, 2, or 3, or even 4 Negronis, then you feel you've earned them. And also sometimes take a little break as well, just to have a little reset as well, because the most important person to get along with is yourself, and you never want to lapse into that thing where you're starting to you're lapsing into the sort of dark thoughts or so on. And alcoholism can sometimes lead you down that path, at least for me. So it is important, I would say,
The stop bit, that's the bit I've not mastered yet. The stop. I can do the after 8 o'clock. I like that. It's too early. If I drink at lunchtime, I'm dead by 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's not, I could never do that. But yeah, I'd have a drink most evenings, throughout this. But the stopping for a cup, I've not mastered that bit yet. I'm working on that. Yeah,
it's not easy, honestly, and especially now when the worst thing you can possibly do, which is what I've learned the hard way, is don't turn on the TV. Because if you turn on the TV and you'll end up on the news. And if you're watching Netflix or whatever, that's fine. But if you put on the normal TV and you end up on the news and you're watching the news at midnight, you're not going to go to bed till 4 in the morning, because it's going to freak you out, right?
Yeah, it is scary, isn't it? It really is. Have you escaped the virus completely, or?
No, we had a recent spike actually. So we Singapore.
I meant you yourself.
Oh, me. I have, but there's not a single one of us that hasn't had friends who are down with it. And I just want to give a shout out to a couple of those people before we sign off at the end of this, but to just let them know that we're thinking about them. There is no one that has not been affected by this in some ways. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to not been affected by it, but so many of my friends have had it, or are going through it. And the thing is, it's, we laugh it off. It's like, oh, maybe I had it asymptomatically or whatever. The people I know who've had it, they've been just done in by it. It's just crushed them,
Yeah.
And so that's something that's very scary as well. I guess the last question I have for you, I had all these kind of like desert island questions, like what pieces of music would you bring with you and so on. Well, maybe I'll just ask you that. Like, so in a desert island context, what are the, let's say 3 or 4 albums you would bring, the people you would bring, and then maybe the 1 or 2 books you would bring?
Is this desert islands? That's a big question. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, one of my favorite all-time albums was. Do you remember War of the Worlds?
But H.G. Wells.
Yeah. Well, that was the book, but there was an album.
Yes.
By oh my goodness, he's a
You're
friend of mine.
absolutely right. Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
The one with the alien on the front. It's got a great cover vinyl album.
Yeah.
It's one of the most played albums I've in my record collection. I mean, especially when I was getting into keyboards in the 80s. I just had it on all the time. I love that record so much. And it's funny. They did like a remake of it, and I contacted the composer to be on it. They were ringing round trying to get singers on it, and I was ringing them to be on it. So I love that album. So that would be the album I'd take, definitely.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And the last question I would have for you would be, so I think, you know, honestly, I think you've been a real inspiration throughout this. So you inspire me throughout this period, like, or just, you know, if you think about someone that inspires you, who would that be?
I have to say this. My wife's pretty inspirational. She really is. You know, if there's one downside to what I do is that music it just eats time. It's time hungry, and so I spend so much of my life working. And she does the lot. She does it all. She does the school run. She does the parents' evening. She does the packing the lunches. She does the sports day. She's just done it all for our 3 kids, and she does it with a smile. You know, she never complains. She's never ever said to me, what you know, what are you going off there for? You know, I travel around having this amazing life. And she's just the best partner in crime ever. And we've been together for 25 years, married for 20. She's just the best. She's my inspiration.
That's amazing. Thank you, Gary. Thank you so much. I just want to give a quick shout out to the 3 people and their dogs, because also their pets can be such an amazing inspiration during this time. So my friend Claire in Edinburgh, who was sick, but now is on the mend, and her dog Cindy. And then 2 people who are healthy, thank God. My friend Helen and her dog Wilma, and our friend Sarah Ann and her dog. She's getting a dachshund, Dave, who's coming to her, I think either this week or next week as well.
That's great.
And that's kind of one of the ways we met each other as well, which is very cool.
And our friend, you may have seen on his Instagram, Alessandro from Duke. I messaged him the other night to make a Manhattan, because on a Friday night I always make my wife a cocktail, and I said to him, show me how to make a Manhattan, and he's like, I'll put it on my Instagram, but I won't tell anybody it's for you. So he posted it up there, and so I could copy it, and it's there you go.
I watched that. That was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So no, we know some great people. We really do.
We know amazing people, and I'm so happy that so many of our friends are mutual friends. And I look forward to the day, which I hope is in the not too distant future, where we can be together with Alessandro, having a Manhattan.
There you go. Let's work towards that.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for your time, and you're absolute inspiration, Gary.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you.
God bless you. Stay safe. Okay. Bye. See ya.
This house built from stone, bricks and mortar, love and hope.